The grand ballroom of the Hollow Ridge estate gleamed with golden candlelight and the scent of roses drifting on the air. Laughter floated between ornate columns, the clinking of champagne glasses echoing across polished marble floors. Olivia Wells, 32, stood still amidst it all, wrapped in a sapphire gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, but feeling like a ghost in her own life. This was supposed to be a celebration, a baby shower for her younger cousin Eliza, the glowing centerpiece of the evening. Olivia had spent weeks helping organize it, sourcing the caterers, curating the guest list, even handwriting the calligraphy on each invitation. Everyone knew she had planned it. Everyone, apparently, except her own husband. The first cut was the toast. Leon, Olivia's husband of 7 years, raised his glass at the head of the long banquet table. His arm was casually draped around Eliza's chair, closer than comfort allowed, his thumb absently brushing against her shoulder. "To Eliza," he began, his voice rich and calm like warm velvet, "and to the beautiful life she's about to bring into this world. This is, truly, the happiest day of my life." A ripple of applause followed. Eliza beamed, cheeks flushed, her hand cradling the swell of her belly. Her eyes glinted with something sharp as she looked directly at Olivia. Time stopped. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. The toast wasn't just oddly enthusiastic, it was intimate. Emotional. Familiar in a way that turned her blood cold. And then the second cut came. Eliza stood. "Thank you, Leon," she said sweetly, then placed her hand gently on his. "And thank you for being there with me every step of the way. I couldn't have done this without you. Because, well..." She turned to the stunned crowd. "Leon is the father." The room stilled, suspended in gasps and dropped forks. Olivia couldn't move. She stared, lips parted, her mind scrambling to understand. The words didn't feel real. Not even as Eliza continued. "I didn't plan on announcing it like this," Eliza said with a gentle sigh, like a queen deigning to explain herself. "But I think it's time everyone knew. Leon and we've been very close for a long time now. And with the baby coming, we just thought honesty was best." Laughter broke, awkward and strangled. Someone muttered, "Is this a joke?" But no one laughed. Olivia's eyes darted to Leon, who now looked like he wanted to disappear. His face was pale, hands trembling just slightly as he set down his glass. "Eliza," he whispered. "We talked about..." "It's fine," she said lightly, cutting him off. She was going to find out anyway. Olivia snapped. Not in a dramatic, throw the glass way. No, her response was colder, cleaner. Calculated. She walked forward, slowly, heels tapping rhythmically on the marble. Her gaze locked on Leon. "Is it true?" He didn't answer. She turned to Eliza, who gave her a smug little shrug. "Eliza," Olivia said, voice low and dangerous, "when exactly did this start?" "That's not really important," Eliza replied, her smile unbothered. "What matters is the future. And the baby. Family supports family, right?" There it was. The bait. Support. Responsibility. Guilt. "Oh, I'll support you," Olivia said softly. "In fact, let's get things official." She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone, scrolling without hesitation. "Leon," she said as she pressed call, "you may want to pay attention. You're about to lose everything." "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice tightening. "I'm calling my lawyer," Olivia said, lifting the phone to her ear as it rang. "Because I'm not going to be married to a man who sleeps with my cousin and then dares to toast her in front of me like she's the one carrying our legacy." The line clicked. "David," she said sweetly, "I need you to begin drafting divorce paperwork." "Yes. Full separation of assets. And I want an injunction on all jointly held properties until this is finalized." Gasps echoed. The room had frozen around them, the crowd now backing away in stunned silence. Leon's mouth opened and closed, helpless. "Olivia, wait." But she wasn't done. "I also want to ensure that the Hollow Ridge estate is off limits to anyone not legally tied to me," she added into the phone. "That includes Eliza. Oh, and check on the business shares. I don't want Leon transferring anything under the table." She hung up and turned to her cousin. "Since we're being honest tonight," Olivia said, voice like polished steel, "let me return the favor. This house? Mine. That bank account you've been tapping through Leon's credit card? Funded by me. The inheritance you thought you were slithering into? Already redirected." Eliza's face faltered, colored raining from her cheeks. "And you," Olivia turned to Leon, "married me because you thought I was weak. You saw me as the boring, Predictable one. But let me make something clear. Her voice dropped. I built this life. You just borrowed it. Leon's hands curled into fists. You're blowing this out of proportion. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. But it did, Olivia replied. And now you will both get exactly what you deserve. She turned and walked toward the exit, the crowd parting like shadows before her. She didn't look back. Outside, the night air was cool and biting. She took a long, slow breath. Her marriage was over. Her family fractured. Her heart, bruised but unbroken, beat steady in her chest. And for the first time in years, she felt truly, completely alive. The next morning, the sky outside Olivia's window was painted in pale grays. Rain tapped gently against the glass, a rhythmic hush that seemed to mirror the stillness in her mind. Her phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, calls, texts, voicemails. But she didn't pick it up. Not yet. She was already dressed when she arrived at her attorney's office by 8 a.m. sharp. Her coat was sharply tailored, her heels steady, her hair tied back like a crown. If the night before had been an ambush, today was the counter-offensive. David Langley, her lawyer, a meticulous man in his late 40s with sharp eyes and a voice like stone, was waiting for her with a thick folder already prepared. You didn't waste any time, he said, gesturing for her to sit. Neither did they, Olivia replied coldly. David opened the folder. We'll file for immediate dissolution of marriage under grounds of infidelity and emotional distress. Given that everything is in your name, the Hollow Ridge estate, the investment accounts, the controlling shares in Orion Ventures, Leon has no financial leverage. He can contest, but he won't win. I want it airtight, Olivia said. No loopholes. No alimony. Nothing. David nodded. Done. We'll serve him this week. As for Eliza. She's nothing, Olivia interrupted. She doesn't exist to me anymore. David studied her for a moment. You're sure you want to go scorched earth? No mediation, no silence clause? Olivia's jaw tightened. Let them burn. He nodded once and got to work. Back at the estate, the storm she had left behind was beginning to unravel. Leon had spent the night calling her repeatedly, leaving voicemail after voicemail that pinged between desperation and denial. Olivia, please, can we just talk? I messed up, I know, but this doesn't have to end like this. She means nothing to me. You know that, right? And finally. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought we were drifting, and she was just there. Olivia deleted each one without listening to the end. Meanwhile, Eliza's own fantasy world was collapsing. Now that the truth was out, the praise and admiration she had basked in the night before turned sour. Family members who had once coddled her were suddenly silent. Calls went unanswered. Her once doting mother now called her reckless. Her friends began to ghost her social events. And to make matters worse, the truth she had hidden from Leon, the truth about the baby, was ticking like a time bomb. It didn't take long to go off. 3 days after the shower, Olivia received a call from David. Eliza's doctor's office just confirmed what we suspected, he said. The gestational dates don't match Leon's timeline. The father isn't him. Olivia's eyebrows lifted slightly. You're sure? We're sure. Her due date points to a conception time 2 months before their affair started. So, Olivia murmured, savoring the irony, he destroyed his marriage for a child that isn't even his. Should I tell him? David asked. No, she said, smiling faintly. Let her do it. Let her explain. Leon didn't take the news well. He showed up at Olivia's estate 4 days after their confrontation, soaked from the rain, his usually sharp features sunken and tired. She didn't open the gate. She simply watched him from the second-floor balcony, sipping her tea while he shouted up toward the windows. Liv, please. I didn't know, she lied to me. Let me in. I can't fix this without you. You're the only one who ever saw me, Olivia. His voice cracked on the last one. And still, she said nothing. That night, he left. Word got back to her that he had moved into a rundown apartment in the industrial district, the kind with leaky ceilings and thin walls. The kind he once mocked when Olivia offered to help his struggling cousin rent one. She didn't laugh at his downfall. Not out loud. But inside, the satisfaction was quiet and complete. Eliza tried next. First it was a message. Eliza, please, Liv. I know I hurt you. But you have to understand, I was scared. I didn't mean for this to happen. Then a voicemail. Leon's gone. He found out. He won't speak to me. I lost my job. My landlord's threatening eviction. I don't have anyone. Then she appeared at the estate gates. Olivia watched from the same balcony as her cousin stood outside in the pouring rain, hair matted, mascara running, one hand protectively over her swollen belly. Olivia didn't open the gate. Not even when Eliza pounded on it, screaming her name. She walked away. A week passed. Then another. Papers were served. Leon's signature came back, scrawled and bitter. Olivia's life began to stretch into new shapes, empty at first, but with time, filled with silence that no longer ached. Her estate grew brighter. Her schedule, freer. She joined a nonprofit board, picked up watercolor painting, and started hosting quiet Sunday brunches with people who respected her. Then, on a quiet Friday afternoon, her father came. She found him waiting in the estate's side garden, sitting on the old stone bench her mother used to love before she passed. He looked older than she remembered, grayer, softer. "Olivia," he said as she approached. "Dad." He stood awkwardly. I wanted to talk. About everything." She folded her arms. "You knew, didn't you?" He flinched. "I didn't know for sure. But your aunt hinted. And I didn't want to believe it. I thought," he swallowed. "I thought if I ignored it, it would go away." She stared at him for a long time. "So you were a coward." "I suppose I was." He paused, then added, "Your mother would have been proud of you." Olivia turned her face slightly toward the distant hills. She would have never let this happen in the first place. "I came to ask if you'd consider helping Eliza," he said gently. "She's not doing well. And the baby." "I'm not responsible for either of them," Olivia cut in. "Eliza made her choices. She made them loudly and proudly. She wanted to play queen. Now she can reign over ashes." Her father looked pained. "She's family." "She was," Olivia said. "Now she's a name I used to say fondly." And with that, she walked away. She didn't cry. Didn't crumble. Instead, she returned to her home, her solitude, her peace. And for the first time in her adult life, she didn't have to carry anyone but herself. Eliza had never felt real fear before. Sure, she'd cried over breakups, panicked when her first job rejected her application, and pouted when the spa forgot to schedule her facial. But this quiet, daily descent into irrelevance, was something different. Something cold and suffocating. 3 weeks had passed since the baby shower turned disaster. 3 weeks since she publicly declared her cousin's husband was the father of her child. 3 weeks since Leon walked out, first from Olivia's life, then hers. Now, the walls were closing in. Her landlord had given her a 7-day notice for rent default. She hadn't told anyone, not because she was ashamed, but because she assumed someone would step in, as always. Someone always did. Her aunt. Her father. Olivia. But this time, no one came. The trust fund she assumed would eventually pass to her? Inaccessible. Locked, apparently, by a clause she hadn't known existed. The stipend she used to get from the family estate? Frozen. Her account showed $13.47. The Uber app rejected her payment. Even her stylist stopped responding to texts. She sat on the floor of her one-bedroom apartment, surrounded by unopened bills and the faint stink of leftover takeout, stomach twisting as the reality of her situation sank in. The worst part wasn't the eviction notice or the empty fridge. It was the silence. Leon had gone completely dark. At first, she'd convinced herself he just needed time. But now, the truth was obvious. He was done with her. Not just because he was angry. Because the DNA test proved he wasn't the father. He'd demanded the test the day after the fallout. Rage in his eyes, voice shaking. "Tell me the truth, Eliza," he said. "Is this even my child?" She'd tried to lie. She really had. But when the results came back negative, there was no spinning it. Leon had packed his bags and left with barely a word. The last she heard, he was crashing on a friend's couch in a city 3 hours away, jobless and bitter. The life he'd tried to steal from Olivia was gone. And all he had left was regret. Eliza, meanwhile, was left to deal with the wreckage. Alone. Across town, Olivia stood in the middle of the greenhouse she had recently restored, surrounded by trailing vines and soft sunlight filtering through frosted glass. Her assistant, Grace, reviewed the schedule for the week, 2 board meetings, a charity gala, and the first round of interviews for a new executive assistant position at Orion Ventures. Olivia nodded, barely listening. She was focused on trimming the wilting edges from a fern that hadn't taken to the transplant. "Anything else?" she asked finally. Grace hesitated. "There's been another message from Eliza. 4, actually. And 2 voicemails." Olivia didn't look up. "Delete them. She's been showing up at the gate again. Call security. No contact." Grace gave a curt nod and left. Olivia stood in the stillness of the greenhouse for a long while. This was her sanctuary now. Her own creation. Not inherited. Not borrowed. And certainly not stolen. She glanced out the glass pane at the long gravel driveway beyond the gate. In the distance, she could just make out the form of Eliza's car, parked, as usual, too close to the security line. She imagined her cousin sitting in there, makeup smudged, baby bump beneath a wrinkled coat, eyes darting between the gate and her phone, waiting for a miracle. There would be none. Eliza tried one last Hail Mary. A handwritten letter. It arrived on creamy stationery with a trembling signature. The ink was smudged, as if she had started crying while writing. "Liv. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I'm scared. I'm going to be a mother. And I have no job, no home, no family left who wants me. I made mistakes. Huge ones. But I'm still your blood. Please. Don't shut me out forever. I don't want anything from you. Just a conversation. Eliza." Olivia read the letter once. Twice. Then folded it neatly and placed it in the fire pit on the terrace. She watched it burn. Leon, meanwhile, was discovering how hard life could be without a safety net. He had never needed to manage his own finances before. Olivia had always done that. Bills? Handled. Insurance? Arranged. Investments? Managed through her firm. All he'd ever had to do was show up, smile at the galas, and pretend to be the architect of a life he hadn't lifted a finger to build. Now, without her, he was barely staying afloat. His last job interview had ended with the recruiter glancing at his resume and saying, "Weren't you on the board of Orion Ventures?" Leon had swallowed the truth. "I was married to the board chair," he said flatly. "Right," the recruiter said, closing the folder. They didn't call him back. One night, drunk and desperate, he called Olivia. She didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "You know, I really loved you, Olivia. I didn't mean to ruin it. I wanted more. I thought I deserved more. But you were the only real thing I ever had." She deleted it the next morning, without a second thought. Eliza finally snapped. She showed up in person. Again. This time, more disheveled than ever. A coat too big for her shoulders. Hair pulled into a limp ponytail. No makeup. She looked ordinary. Desperate. The butler informed Olivia of her presence. "She's crying," he said, eyes unsure. "Should I call security?" "No," Olivia said. "I'll handle it." She met Eliza on the front steps, arms crossed over her chest. Eliza sprang up from the stone bench. "Please," she said immediately. "Just 5 minutes." Olivia's voice was calm, cold. "What do you want?" "I don't know," Eliza whispered. "A place to stay. A job. Something. I can't go back to Dad's. They're ashamed of me. You made your choices. I thought Leon loved me," she said miserably. "I thought I'd finally be the one who won." Olivia stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "You never wanted to win," she said. "You just wanted to steal." Eliza's mouth trembled. "I was jealous. Always. You had everything. The brains, the class, the money. I just wanted something to be mine. And you chose my husband," Olivia said flatly. "You didn't just want to be me. You wanted to take me apart. And now that it's all blown up in your face, you want me to rescue you." Eliza shook her head quickly. "No. I just need." Olivia raised a hand. "No," she said. "You need to figure out how to clean up the mess you created. Like an adult. Like the rest of us." She turned and walked back into the house. And this time, she didn't look back. That night, Olivia poured herself a glass of red wine and sat on the balcony of her private suite. The stars were out, scattered across the sky like shattered glass. She breathed in the silence, let the cool wind brush her cheek. Eliza and Leon were gone. The empire they had tried to build on betrayal and greed had crumbled into dust. And Olivia? She was still standing. No, more than that, she was thriving. She didn't need to win. She just needed to walk away with her dignity intact and her freedom untouched. And that was exactly what she had done. Late summer rolled over the Hollow Ridge estate like a golden tide, sunlight spilling through windows, warm wind rustling through the trees lining the gravel driveway. It should have been idyllic. Serene. But Olivia felt it before she saw it, a familiar disturbance in her perfectly restructured world. It started with a message from Grace. "Grace, your step-aunt just called. She says it's urgent. Family matter. Should I block her too?" Olivia stared at the message for a long time. Her step-aunt, Barbara, was Eliza's mother, and Olivia's father's second wife. The same woman who had, for years, orchestrated the golden pedestal on which Eliza stood. Barbara had never hidden her favoritism. She treated Eliza like royalty and Olivia like an afterthought who was useful only for her financial stability and social polish. Now she was calling. Begging, apparently. Olivia didn't block her. Not yet. Instead, she drove. She didn't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe closure. Maybe, deep down, she wanted to see with her own eyes how the mighty had fallen. The old family house was 20 minutes outside the city, a colonial-style mansion that Olivia's father had inherited from his grandfather, but one that Barbara had slowly molded into her own palace over the years. Olivia had grown up there, once upon a time. But now, as she pulled into the cracked driveway lined with wilting hedges, the house looked tired, uncared for, almost abandoned. She knocked once. The door opened before the echo even faded. Barbara stood there, thinner than Olivia remembered, her once perfect hair tied back in a hasty bun. Her face, usually painted with foundation and pride, was bare and worn. Years of arrogance had melted into something quieter. Sadder. "Olivia," she breathed. Olivia stepped inside without a word. The house smelled of lemon polish and desperation. The grand foyer, once pristine, had a layer of dust on the crown molding. A painting leaned crookedly on the wall. There were cardboard boxes stacked in the hallway, some sealed, some half-opened with papers spilling out. The sense of unraveling was everywhere. Barbara led her into the sitting room. Eliza was there. She sat on the edge of the couch, her body curled inward, hands trembling in her lap. Her stomach was no longer swollen. She must have given birth in the last few weeks. A baby monitor crackled quietly on the coffee table next to an empty bottle and a burp cloth. "Where's the baby?" Olivia asked flatly. "Upstairs," Eliza whispered. Barbara sat across from her, clasping her hands like she was holding together the last threads of control. "Thank you for coming." Olivia said nothing. "I know things have deteriorated," Barbara continued. "But I wanted to talk. To clear the air. To try to bring this family back together." Olivia raised a brow. "Now you want a family?" Barbara flinched. "Eliza has been through a lot," she said softly. "I don't doubt that," Olivia replied. "She earned every bit of it." "Olivia," Eliza croaked. "I made a mistake." Olivia turned to her cousin. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You slept with my husband, paraded him in front of our family, and humiliated me at a party I planned. You didn't just make a mistake. You betrayed me. You gutted me. Publicly." Eliza's lips trembled. "I thought he was the one. I thought he loved me." "He didn't," Olivia said. "He loved the version of you he thought would inherit my life." Barbara cut in again. "That's all in the past. Now we need to think about the future. The baby. Olivia, you have the resources to help." And there it was. The real reason for this meeting. Not healing. Not family. Money. Olivia exhaled slowly and looked her step-aunt dead in the eye. "You're unbelievable." Barbara's mouth twisted into a practiced smile. "This isn't just about Eliza. That child is a Wells. Your blood. Your legacy. Don't you care about that?" "Barbara," Olivia said, her voice soft and final, "you chose your daughter over me for 2 decades. Every holiday. Every family dinner. Every moment that counted, you made it clear who mattered. And now that your golden girl's halo has rusted, you come crawling." "I'm asking for compassion," Barbara said, her voice quivering. "No," Olivia said. "You're asking for funding." The silence in the room thickened. Eliza shifted, her eyes wide and wet. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "I've said it 100 times. And not once has it sounded like you mean it." Eliza shook her head. "I don't have anywhere else to go. I don't have anyone else." Olivia rose from the couch. "I once offered you a real sisterhood," she said. "I stood by you when no one else did. And you took that and drove a knife into it. I won't pretend that didn't happen just because you're uncomfortable now. Barbara stood, anger flaring in her voice. You would let your own blood suffer? That baby upstairs is innocent. Olivia turned toward the doorway. I'm not punishing the baby. But I won't reward the mother. She paused in the doorway, then turned back one last time. You both expected to walk through life protected by my kindness, my money, my silence. You've burned every bridge you ever had with me. And now you want me to help rebuild them? No. Barbara's eyes narrowed. One day, you'll regret this. Olivia gave a soft, tired smile. Maybe. But I'll regret that less than I regret letting you walk all over me again. She walked out of the house, the door shutting behind her like a final chapter closing. The sun hit her face as she stepped outside, warm and clear. The wind blew softly, pulling at the ends of her coat like a gentle nudge forward. She didn't look back. That night, back at her estate, Olivia stood on the terrace, sipping tea while stars glimmered across the vast night sky. Grace joined her for a moment, a glass of wine in hand. You okay? Grace asked. I'm not angry anymore, Olivia said. Just done. You think they'll try again? Maybe. But they'll never get close. Grace raised her glass. To peace. To peace, Olivia echoed. And for the first time in years, she truly felt it. 6 months later, autumn had come to Holloridge. The trees were turning golden rust, their leaves blanketing the long, private driveway that wound through Olivia Wells's estate like a path to a forgotten world. Inside the grand house, everything felt crisp and alive. The scent of cedarwood and fresh linen filled the air. A fire crackled gently in the hearth of the drawing room. And for the first time in a long, long time, Olivia's world was quiet, but not lonely. She was different now. It wasn't in some grand, cinematic way. There was no sudden transformation, no overnight shift. Just quiet, steady change. Like water wearing away stone. A daily act of choosing herself. Every morning, she made tea in her own kitchen. Every evening, she read by the fire or sketched in the sunroom or walked through her greenhouse barefoot. She no longer braced herself for a phone call, a guilt trip, or a crisis she had to solve. The silence wasn't a void, it was a sanctuary. The messages had stopped months ago. Eliza had finally given up, retreating into whatever version of survival she could piece together. Olivia had heard through a third party that she'd moved into a small flat in the outskirts of the city. She was working retail, barely managing rent, and raising her child alone. Olivia didn't ask for details. She didn't want to know more than that. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. She didn't hate Eliza. She just didn't owe her anything. And Leon? Last Olivia heard, he was living in a cramped apartment above a failing bar. He was bouncing between short-term gigs and spiraling in debt. His charm, so carefully cultivated over the years, didn't stretch far when stripped of wealth and title. No more charity galas. No more tailored suits. No more being Mr. Olivia Wells. Without her name, he was just Leon. And no one seemed particularly interested in that version. Olivia had let it all go. The betrayal. The anger. The weight of being the one expected to carry everything. She'd severed the invisible cords that had tethered her to people who saw her only as a means to an end. And in doing so, she had built a life that belonged to her alone. It wasn't glamorous all the time. Some mornings were slow. Some nights were heavy. But they were hers. And that made all the difference. One Sunday afternoon, she was sipping coffee at a sunlit cafe in the old part of town when she heard someone call her name. Olivia? She looked up, her expression calm but curious. Her father stood there. He looked older. Not just in the way time makes a man age, but in the way disappointment and shame dig into the lines around the eyes. He was thinner, more subdued. Dressed in clothes that seemed too formal for a casual cafe. He held his hat in his hands like he was unsure if he was welcome. I thought that was you, he said gently. She sipped her coffee. Hello, Dad. He smiled awkwardly. You look well. I am. He sat down uninvited but slowly, cautiously, like he knew he was entering foreign territory. I've been meaning to reach out. You had 6 months. I know, he said, voice softening. I just didn't know how to. She looked at him, really looked at him. This was the man who had let Barbara call the shots for decades. The man who had watched his stepdaughter erode Olivia's space in the family and did nothing. The man who had looked away when Leon toasted Eliza in front of the entire family and said nothing when Olivia walked out the door. And now here he was. I wanted to say I'm sorry, he said. For not protecting you. For not standing up when I should have. You were always the strong one, and I guess I leaned on that too much. She studied him for a long moment. I spent a lot of years waiting for you to see me, she said. Not as a support beam or a backup plan. Just as your daughter. I know, he said. And I failed you. But I'd like to make it right. Olivia set her cup down. I don't think you can, she said. But I appreciate the apology. He looked disappointed, but not surprised. Is there any way back? To the past? No, she said. To something new. Maybe. But only if it's built on truth. He nodded. I'll try. She offered a small, careful smile. Then we'll see. He left after that, no pressure, no pleas, no attempts to guilt her. And that alone was progress. That evening, Olivia returned home and stood at the edge of her property, overlooking the quiet garden she'd spent months cultivating. Roses bloomed despite the season's shift. The scent of lavender still lingered in the breeze. She thought of everything she had endured. Every betrayal. Every dismissal. Every silent scream swallowed in the name of grace. And she thought of what came after: resilience, clarity, control. She didn't need to burn bridges anymore. She didn't need to fight. Because she had already won, not by defeating others, but by reclaiming herself. A few days later, she received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photograph, faded, soft-edged. A candid shot of her and Eliza as children, sitting on the edge of the estate fountain, eating popsicles in matching sundresses. There was a sticky note attached. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope one day, you'll remember the version of us before everything broke. Olivia held the photo for a while. Not crying. Not smiling. Just remembering. Then she tucked it into a drawer, not to hide it, but to acknowledge it. A relic of a past that was real, but no longer relevant. That night, Olivia lit a single candle and placed it in the center of her writing desk. She opened her journal and wrote only one sentence. I chose peace, and I will never apologize for it. Then she closed the book, blew out the flame, and went to sleep beneath a sky full of stars that finally felt like they belonged to her.